So, good afternoon. I'm Paul Bress, an emeritus professor at the law school, and I co-teach Democracy and Disagreement with Deborah Satz, a philosophy professor and dean of the School of Humanities and Sciences. And Deborah will moderate the conversation today. Kaiser Goodman is our teaching fellow. Just a reminder about the motivation of the course, especially because we have quite a few guests. Deep disagreement pervades our democracy, from arguments over immigration, foreign policy, reparations in the Middle East, to the functions of elite higher education, DEI, and the value of free speech itself. Such disagreement is not by itself a cause for concern. We should expect that in a democratic society, a society based on the equal freedom and status of its members, reasonable people will disagree about many things. Some of the deepest questions of morality, religion, and value are hard to think through. Even people who are well-motivated and conscientious will answer questions pertaining to some of these matters in different ways, perhaps because of their different experiences, or because the facts are hard to pin down and admit of various interpretations, or because they'll make different trade-offs among competing values. Democracy, as Deborah has reminded us, is a feature of democratic societies, not a bug. But not all disagreement is productive. Sometimes people fail to consider inconvenient facts and close their minds to the evidence and to reasoning that doesn't support their views. Sometimes, and all too frequently in online platforms, a culture of incivility prevails with respect to those with whom we disagree. Note by incivility, we're not talking about politeness, talking rather about the failure to treat other people with respect simply because they hold different views on matters that we care about. The closing of the mind is especially a concern for a university. The fundamental mission of the university, the pursuit of knowledge, absolutely depends on the free exchange of ideas and openness to questions and to questioning received opinions. History shows us how often we get things wrong, even when we're trying to figure out the truth. And it's because we feel this mission, the purpose of knowledge, the pursuit of knowledge, is under stress from forces both outside and inside the university, that Deborah and I decided last year to launch this class. This is the second year we're teaching it. We believe that closed minds are not good for democracy, and universities have an important role to play in producing responsible citizens, but feel free to disagree. As we note on the syllabus, the course is offered in the spirit of the observation by Hannah Gray, former president of the University of Chicago, that education should not be intended to make people comfortable, it is meant to make them think. Each week features scholars who disagree, sometimes quite strongly, about major policy issues, but each is committed to following the evidence and to try to present reasons that others can understand and acknowledge. Just turning to logistical matters, as we did last week, we'll wait until later in the class to note your attendance. In a moment, Deborah will introduce our speakers, who will each present their views for about 10 minutes, and then participate in a conversation with each other. After the first hour or so, the floor will be open for questions or comments by our students and also our auditors. And we'll survey the class at the beginning and at the end of the conversation to see whether arguments moved minds. That said, even when minds are not moved, we hope the class gives you an appreciation for the reasoning behind the views you reject. And I now turn this over to Deborah, who will moderate.
All right, welcome everybody. So we live in an age of astounding inequality. Income and wealth disparities in the United States have risen to heights not seen since the Gilded Age and are among the highest in the developed world. Inequality has been linked to some important recent political events, including the rise of populism across the developed world, the vote for Brexit in the UK, and arguably it's contributed to the fraying of our common institutions. Many believe that our institutions that were designed in a democracy to serve the interests of everyone, from the courts to education to the political process, Many believe that these have given disproportionate influence to the very rich. Inequality, therefore, also lies at the center of many disagreements about fairness. There could hardly be a more pressing time to understand how inequality arises and how it should be addressed. Of course, there are many kinds of inequality, and not all inequalities matter equally, or for that matter, are objectionable. I'm shorter, for example, than the other people on stage who are on stage with me. So we always have a question about which inequalities matter and why they matter, and if they matter, what we should do about them. Today, we're going to focus on one kind of inequality, inequality in wealth. Wealth inequality raises not only some very complicated economic questions, including questions about what it is, how to define it, how to measure it, but it also raises normative questions about what we should do about it, if anything, and why. But what we should do about inequality, about wealth inequality, depends not only on our values, but on empirical considerations. So to guide us in thinking about this, we have two fantastic economists with us today. Emmanuel Saez is professor of economics at UC Berkeley, where he directs the Stone Center on Wealth and Income Inequality. He, along with his collaborators, have produced an incredible data set on the growth of inequality over time and around the world. He has received some of the top academic awards in economics, including the John Bates Clark Medal, which is given to an economist under 40 judged to have made the most significant contribution to economic knowledge. In 2019, along with Gabriel Zucman, he co-authored The Triumph of Injustice: How the Rich Dodge Taxes and How to Make Them Pay. Larry Summers was the Secretary of the Treasury from 1999 to 2001 and Director of the National Economic Council from 2009 to 2010. He's had multiple positions in the government, maybe too many to count, but including, but not limited to, Chief Economist of the World Bank. And he was also Harvard's 27th president, where he now holds a rare and prestigious university-wide professorship. His research spans numerous areas: inflation, stagnation, global economics, global health, among other areas. He has also won numerous awards and honors, including the John Bates Clark Medal. So we have two Clark medalists with us today. Please join me in welcoming our guests, and we will begin with Emmanuel, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. So Emmanuel. Sorry, can we put up the question also? And if everybody can take a second and just answer the question.
Right. Thank you very much, Paul and Deborah, for this very generous introduction. So I'm delighted to be with you this afternoon to talk about the wealth tax on the ultra-rich, and I'm going to start with the case 4. I only have 1/4 of the audience to convince, as we saw with the results. And actually, the results we got are not so dissimilar from what you get when you poll, the broader publics. The wealth tax on the ultra-rich is particularly popular, more so than other options to increase taxation on the rich. And let me discuss, let me first, explain so that we are all on the same page, what is the wealth tax on the ultra-rich. So it's an annual tax on households' wealth above a large exemption level. And one example I want you to have in mind is the one that Elizabeth Warren proposed in her presidential primary campaign in 2019, that would impose a tax of 2% on wealth above $50 million, with an extra gradation that if you reach 1 billion in wealth, your wealth above 1 billion, pays an extra point, for a total of 3%. So $50 million, that's about, the threshold where you get into the top 0.1% wealthiest American household, one in 1,000. Wealth, what is wealth? So wealth, for this wealth tax, would be defined as the value of all marketable assets that U.S. residents and U.S. citizens own worldwide. So everything counts. It doesn't matter where the assets are sitting. So think about real estate, the value of your businesses, the value of businesses organized in corporations, the value of the corporate stocks, bonds, etc., net of all your debt. So why a wealth tax on the ultra wealthy? So let me start showing you, a striking evolution in wealth inequality, and in particular, the share of total household wealth that is going, to the top 0.1% in the United States since the 1970s. So those are numbers we compiled, created with my co-author Gabriel Zucman. And so I've shown you only the data since 1970. So what is really striking is this enormous increase in the share of wealth going to the very top, where we go from less than 10% in the 1970s to about 20% or even slightly more today. So wealth has concentrated towards the top. What is not visible on that graph is that also the weight of wealth overall has increased relative to the economy. Namely, in the 70s, total household wealth, the value of that represented 2.5 years of GDP. Now it's 5 years of GDP. So if you measure the wealth of the top 0.1% relative to GDP, you get an even more striking upward trajectory, where you go from less than 20% of annual GDP to 100% of annual GDP. So why am I measuring things relative to GDP? It's because I want to think about the revenue potential of a wealth tax. So you can see that if the richest 0.1% have wealth that is 100% of GDP, if I succeed in designing a wealth tax that raises that has an effective tax rate of just 1% on that group, I would raise 1 point of GDP in tax revenue. That's about 300 billion, or counting over 10 years, like Washington, D.C. likes to do, that would be $4 trillion, about as big as renewing, the Trump tax cut that's currently being discussed in Congress. So just with this increase in concentration and the increase in the weight of wealth, there is a lot of wealth at the top, and therefore the tax can raise, large amounts of revenue. So I also want to mention that the concentration of wealth is more dramatic the higher you go in the distribution. So this one shows you what we like to call the billionaire class, using the Forbes 400 rich list, normalized by population. So you see it's the top 0.00 owe the 25%, about 400 households today, and you can see that relative to GDP, they've been multiplied, by 10 from 2% to about 20% of GDP. So just from that group, if you can put a tax, 1, 2%, you get substantial revenue. So why a wealth tax? So I've discussed tax revenue. US wealth is top-heavy. The wealthiest are those who have done the best in recent decades, who have benefited the most from the economic transformations, globalization, the rise of new tech businesses. So it makes sense to ask them to contribute more. The second thing is that you may want, to have a wealth tax because the current tax system is not very good at taxing the very wealthiest. I'll show you numbers. And the third one, the more you move to the left, that would be an argument against oligarchy risks, something we've debated, with Larry Summers vigorously 5 years ago. There have been developments since then, and so I look forward to that discussion again. And I will say a few things about concerns of opponents. One, wealth tax will be easy to avoid and evade, so this thing is never going to work. That's one type of criticism. The second type of criticism, if it works, you are going to destroy the economy by despoiling, and discouraging top entrepreneurs. I will say a word about that as well. So let me talk about tax fairness. So this chart comes from the work we did with Gabriel Zucman. So if you look at the top line, it shows you the tax rate relative to income for various groups in the distribution, and breaking down, the very top in very small groups. The last point here will be the top 400. And the various colors, and patterns show you the contribution of each tax, including all taxes at the federal, state, and local level. So when you look at that picture, you can see that all groups pay about, 25 to 30% of their true economic income in taxes, with some progressivity over most of the distribution, but that at the very top, and particularly, for the billionaire class, the tax rate relative to economic income drops. And the reason for that, it's because the individual income tax, the gray, light gray area here, doesn't do a very good job at taxing billionaires. So think about Jeff Bezos. He owns about 10% of Amazon. Amazon has made $60 billion in profits last year, so his true economic income is $6 billion, 10% of that. But Amazon doesn't distribute dividends, and therefore, if Jeff Bezos doesn't sell any Amazon stock, he's not going to pay any individual income tax. The only tax he really pays is the corporate tax that Amazon is paying. The corporate tax today is small. If you're a multinational company, you can further reduce your rate. So you can see the role of the corporate and property taxes is not that large. So that's an extreme case, but we've done more work, actually ongoing work now, where we've literally merged the tax returns of the top 400, to their individual and business tax returns. So we'll have refined numbers. If anything, the situation is more dire than that. Now, those numbers shocked the world, when we presented them with Gabriel Zucman. I should say that the United States is doing relatively better than other Western countries because it still has a well-working, income tax. The drop at the very top of the distribution is worse with the European tax systems. So now, what would the wealth tax do to this part? You see, it would add the blue part up here. So remember, a tax on wealth is relative to wealth, and therefore 2% relative to wealth is quite a bit relative to the income generated by wealth. So that's why it can add, 15, 20 points of taxation and would make the tax structure really progressive. That's why if you want a more progressive system, the wealth tax is indeed the most powerful one to achieve that. Now, can a wealth tax be well enforced? That is, the numbers here are assuming, only a 15% avoidance evasion rate. And here, indeed, if you look at the experience of Europe, the wealth taxes there didn't do well because of offshore tax evasion and expatriation threats. That is, you could avoid, say, the French wealth tax by moving your wealth to Swiss financial institutions and not reporting them, and it was very hard for the French tax authorities to know how much you had, or by moving to London, and after 1 year, you were no longer liable for the French wealth tax. Those two weaknesses can be remedied in the sense that offshore tax evasion is now policed, actually thanks to a US development under the Obama administration called FATCA, Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, where the United States said, if you're a foreign institution and you hold wealth of US residents or US citizens, and you don't report that to the IRS and you get caught, we're going to punish you severely. And because the US controls the financial world system, it has been an effective way to make banks comply, so much that then other countries decided, we want the same thing, and it was developed into a common reporting standard. In terms of living to flee the tax, the US taxes expatriates. If you remain a US citizen and you live abroad, you remain liable for US taxes as long as you don't pay, up to the US levels in taxes. The US will charge you the difference. And there is also an exit tax if you renounce citizenship. So you see, just with that design, it makes it much, much harder to leave the tax. Finally, wealth tax base can be made comprehensive, which wasn't the case for the European wealth taxes. We can discuss, issues of valuations, but basically in a modern economy, the very wealthiest, most of their wealth comes from businesses, and businesses are organized in shares, which means they are divisible. The ownership is really divisible. So, a 2% wealth tax means you have to pay every year, 2% of your business shares. If you have a stake, 10% in Amazon for Bezos, next year he will have only, 9.8%, and so on. That's how the wealth tax is going to work on the ultra wealthy. Now, with Larry Summers, with Natasha Sarin said, the wealth tax is not going to raise nearly as much as you say, and here we've put in blue his numbers that correspond more or less to the 90% avoidance evasion rate. So at that point, we were upset and we debated it. I want to say there is wisdom in those numbers, in the sense that if the wealth tax is designed the way it was done in France, for example, in other European countries, that's the type of revenue you would get. For example, if you exempt business owners, from taxation on their stake of a company, Jeff Bezos still works for Amazon, he would be exempt on his wealth, and in that case, the wealth tax base is going to be very, very narrow. The last point I want to make, and perhaps that was the most controversial, it's the oligarchy risk and wealth taxation. And the point I want to make that is, if you look at the broad history of human societies, top wealth and political power are closely connected. We learned from anthropologists that human evolution took place in hunter-gatherers, small bands without wealth and which were relatively egalitarian. But when wealth was created, with economic development in the form first of agricultural land, that's when you see the first despotic regimes arise. And actually, ownership of wealth, political power are first, the same thing. You think about a feudal society. And so with more complex regimes, wealth, top wealth, say from industry and political leaders were not the same, but certainly top wealth was doing its best, to influence political leaders. And the big transformation of the 20th century is the fact that Western democracies succeed in curbing top wealth, through regulation, so breaking monopolies, think antitrust, early 20th century, and then the development of progressive taxation. And it took a long time because you need, true democracies to reflect, the will of people to really curb the power of top wealth. But we know even today that top wealth continues to buy political influence. You have a course on that, almost in real time by looking at what has happened in this country with Elon Musk, richest man in the world, wasn't influencing politics that much, until about 2 years ago. The way he buys influence is by buying Twitter, tweaking the algorithm, to influence millions, funding the Trump campaign, 300 million, which for him is a small sum, it's 0.1% of his wealth, and then taking a job in the administration, and as you know, the jackhammer in the federal government. So obviously, the Warren wealth tax would not have prevented Elon Musk wealth, to rise, but I want to think and debate, with you the idea that democratic societies, if they really want to stay democratic, they need to regulate top wealth. In other words, one person, one vote, and $1, one vote, which is what the power of wealth can become, don't mix well together. And so what are the rules and institutions we can think about, to regulate top wealth? I think, the progressive wealth tax is probably the most powerful one to curb, the enormous accumulations of wealth. Thank you.
Let me make 4 points today on our topic of the wealth tax. First, we all agree that it would be desirable for the United States to have less inequality. We all agree that it would be desirable for the United States to have a substantially more progressive tax system. There are a variety of measures, I'll mention a couple of them in just a second, that would make the tax system substantially more progressive that, for a range of political reasons, have not been feasible to implement politically. They are much less radical and much closer to political norms than the wealth tax. So I don't believe as a political strategy for addressing the wealth tax has any viability at all. And I also, as I'm going to get to, have substantive issues with respect to it as well. What should we be doing? We should be enforcing the tax law that we have. In 2017, there were 100 people with incomes over $10 million who didn't file tax returns, who were never audited in any way, and the statute of limitations was allowed to run. Taxes that are owed but not paid will constitute about $8 trillion over the next 10 years. The Biden administration, to its credit, was making substantial efforts to strengthen the IRS and the auditing function, particularly among those at the high end. Those efforts are in the process of being eviscerated. There are all kinds of tax shelters that should be closed. Emmanuel must have the number. I don't know what exactly it is, but the Forbes 400 to which he referred has a combined net worth of about $7 trillion. It would be a conservative estimate that 3% of them die each year. That would represent $210 billion. We supposedly have a 40% estate tax in the United States. So if that was effectively levied on those $210 billion, that would be about $80 billion. The estate tax in the United States, levied not just on the Forbes 400, but on everyone in America, raises about $20 billion because of widespread and substantial evasion. There's no reason why the corporate tax rate should be only 20%. The business community in 2017 said it would be very excited by a 25% corporate tax rate. And critically, with respect to the kind of example that Emmanuel gave about Jeff Bezos, we should have, and I'll be slightly technical here, constructive realization of capital gains at death. The way the law works now, Jeff Bezos owns Amazon stock. The Amazon stock that he owns goes from being worth $1 billion to being worth $200 billion. He dies and passes it to his children. His children sell the stock for $210 billion, and they pay tax on 10, not tax on 209. That's not how it should be. So we should have much more progressive taxation, and we don't. And that should be a priority for everybody. The question I think we are here to debate is not whether we should have more progressive taxation, but whether framing the problem in terms of wealth inequality and wealth taxation is a productive avenue. And I am very skeptical of that. Wealth is a complex concept. Imagine two individuals, both of whom earn $5 million a year and have been earning $5 million a year since the beginning of this century. One of them spends it every year, perhaps on campaign contributions. The other saves it and invests in the economy. The latter will have well over $100 million, probably close to $300 million today. They both had the same income. They both had choices and could make the same choices. Why should the one who saved and invested in the economy, rather than who spent, including on influence, pay substantially more taxes? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think there is a good answer to that question. Here's another point. We talk about wealth inequality, but it's a funny measure. Suppose we strengthen, as we have over time, Social Security and Medicare, so that most Americans can count on getting well over half of their after-tax income when they were working from the Social Security system for their retirement. Then they have much less need to save. So they don't accumulate very much wealth, and measured wealth inequality goes up. A stronger safety net, ironically, means more wealth inequality. So judging the quality of our programs by our wealth inequality, I don't think is a very good idea. Ask yourself this question. If America had 5 more people like Bill Gates, like Steve Jobs, like Jeff Bezos, who had done all the things they did, started massively successful enterprises that competed all over the globe, would it be a better country or a worse country? Would things be better or would things be worse? No question that wealth inequality would be higher, but I think we'd probably be, in many ways, a better country. And so judging how we are doing on the strength of wealth inequality, I think is a rather problematic approach. Emmanuel has done really hugely heroic work with Gabe Zuckman and others measuring wealth inequality, but I'm sure he would agree that there are many, many methodological issues that work invokes. How do you go from my tax return, which reports interest and dividends and other things, to an estimate of what my wealth is? And I think I'd be fair-minded in saying that there's substantial controversy, and there are many scholars who believe that the extent of those trends upwards in inequality are somewhat overstated by their estimates. So I'm not sure that thinking about wealth inequality is the right way to think about inequality as something we're trying to reduce. A place where Emmanuel and I really do pretty fundamentally disagree is, can you usefully get at political power and the bad role of money in politics with a wealth tax? I would just put it this way. Elon Musk spent 1 week's worth of the income from his wealth to get the influence he got on behalf of Donald Trump. 1 week. Suppose we had taxed his wealth at 2% this year. Suppose we taxed it at 2% last year. Would Elon Musk have been able to come up with $300 million? No question about it in any reasonable construction. It's the amount of money that is spent being influential in American politics is, in a sense, not remarkably high. It's remarkably low. And so if you want to get at the problem, you have to get at the expenditure of money and the expenditure of resources and what the campaign finance rules are and who's allowed to be creating advertisements. But going at the level of wealth is not going to be the way. Suppose, though, you wanted to do it and you did it. What would the effect be? If Elon Musk put it in the Musk Foundation for the promotion of his causes, he wouldn't have to pay the tax. So in a way, you would be encouraging the more rapid mobilization of the resources of the wealthy behind their desires and their causes. And so it might even be counterproductive with respect to the objective of oligarchy. And by the way, if you ask who were the two largest contributors to political causes between 2001 and 2022, the answer is Mike Bloomberg and Tom Steyer, both of whom gave their money to progressive causes. I'm probably one of the few people in this room, I think Paul and Deborah probably also qualify, who were old enough to remember the Gene McCarthy campaign against Lyndon Johnson in 1968. It was all funded by a small number of wealthy Democrats. And so it is just not the case that the net pressure from money has been towards more conservative causes. So the idea that you're going to stop bad oligarchy, I don't think is terribly compelling. And I'd also just want to note that there are a variety, and this is my last point, other problems with the wealth tax. So let's just start from the fact. The fact is that 15 countries in Europe used to have them, and 0 of those countries, actually 1 of those countries, Switzerland, still has them. So every place that has tried it has abandoned it as a failure. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be made to work, but if I had gone to the Treasury staff and the highly competent Treasury tax lawyers with the points that Emmanuel made, they would have said to me, Larry, what about the guy who owns 12 car dealerships and is worth $80 million? Are we going to make him start selling his car dealerships a little bit each year? Most people are going to think that that's unfair. What about the Sulzberger family that owns the New York Times? Worth several billion dollars. Are we going to make them sell off the New York Times in order to have this wealth tax? It's a basic truism of practicality, not of academic thinking about tax, but of practicality, that any tax idea that asks people to pay substantial sums of cash when they're not getting substantial sums of cash is highly difficult to implement and seems unfair to the vast majority of our citizens. That's the problem with the estate tax, by the way. Dad was very rich, dad died, mom was very rich, mom died, and now there's this family business and it's very traumatic, and somebody's asking for huge amounts of money because the family business is very, very valuable. This is something that democratic societies don't succeed in accomplishing. They don't succeed in collecting substantial taxes at moments when people are not getting substantial amounts of cash. That's why the tax capital gains is the better approach. And here's a final point. What's fair? So here's at least a way of thinking about it. You can think of, when you invest money, you can think of there being two parts of the return. There's the safe part of the return. I invest and I get interest. And then you can think about the risk premium, the fact that I get more than the safe interest rate because my thing might go up or it might go down. What's the safe return? Safe return is the interest rate minus inflation. It's averaged about 1% over the last 50 years. So the tax on wealth is about a 200% tax on the safe return. Now you might say, well, okay, but we should tax the risky return. Well, maybe we should, but do we allow people to take losses when their assets go down in value? Mostly we don't. So should we operate an asymmetric system where when things go down, you don't get to take losses unless you have other gains, and when things go up, you have to? I think we should have a more progressive tax. But if you basically say that people who are wealthy should pay a 200% tax on each year's expected annual return, and then they should be exposed to an asymmetric tax on the risk, and on top of that, they should be paying a wealth tax? What's the right principle of fairness where people choose to take risk? They choose to take risks in things that are overwhelmingly likely to fail, and they have a spectacular success. What's the right way to think about that if we think that that's a desirable thing, or even if we want to just think about fairness? So a wealth tax isn't something that has political appeal. It's something whose practicality is rejected by almost every tax lawyer of either political party who has been involved in the practical formulation of tax policy. It won't, in a meaningful or significant way, take money out of politics. Isn't it better to focus on obvious, clear wrongs, like all the tax shelters and the failure to collect the taxes that are legally owed, and even to audit rich people who don't pay any returns? I think that's the better way forward, and that's why I think it's a snare and a delusion for those who are progressive to be investing their effort in the wealth tax idea.
So, Emmanuel, I want to give you a chance to respond, and then Larry to respond to the response, and then I'll ask a question, but because of the time that was lost, I'm going to turn it over to the audience sooner than I had planned.
Yes. Thank you, Larry, for this debate. So, the important innovation that I didn't stress out in the Elizabeth Warren wealth tax relative to previous experiences in Europe is that she picked a really high exemption threshold of 50 million, while European wealth taxes had, like a 1 million exemption threshold, so that the upper middle class was liable. And indeed, when you tax only the moderately rich, all the issues that Larry emphasized are very important, because there are small businesses, they are not organized in corporate shares, so it's hard, there's not necessarily a cash flow. And those examples were used, by political opponents. Now, when you're thinking about a wealth tax on 50 million, there are other proposals, to have an exemption threshold even higher. My co-author Gabriel Zucman is promoting a billionaire a minimum tax that's effectively a wealth tax, only on billionaires. Those issues largely go away because for the super rich, businesses will be always divisible in shares. They will be partnerships, corporations, where by definition, it's an invention of capitalism to be able to divide ownership so that even if you are not the sole owner, you can run the business. That's what venture capitalists do. Those people, Bezos, etc., they had help, from venture capitalists that diluted their shares, that didn't prevent them, from moving forward. And after some point, a big business will continue, even if there is no large shareholder. Apple is a good example where there is no large shareholder because Steve Jobs, left, sold his shares, and when he came back, he was hired as a CEO with no stake. It doesn't prevent businesses, from doing very well. So in terms of political power and the bad role of money, I mean, at a certain level, I agree with Larry that it's not the Warren wealth tax, for a few years is not going to change dramatically the picture. I agree that given what we see, with the incredible success of Elon Musk in influencing government, it was cheap for him. He paid only $300 million, to help elect Trump. And he has an enormous influence. That's, a return, for him that's just incredible. But what this tells you is that there has been restraint so far, that billionaires felt, it's not my job to do everything I can to influence government. We are moving, to a new world where it's going to be more, following the example of the president. I do everything I can to push, my wealth, my power, and I don't care about, norms of democratic behavior. And in that case, you will see that a democracy to survive, will have to regulate power. And I hope, that if there is a solution, it will involve finding ways, to limit the accumulation of enormous wealth, that it's true that when an entrepreneur creates a business, it's a good thing. I totally agree that that's what helps generate economic growth. But once a business has developed and is big, it becomes entrenched, and what the business does is protect his business position. And that's why, capitalist societies have had to regulate monopolies. Large shareholders, like we see with Elon Musk, have a further detrimental effect potentially on democracy, because he's not acting on behalf of Tesla anymore. He's thinking, about his own power. And you'll have to do something. In principle, campaign finance, no money in politics is the first route you should be doing, except that largely disappeared. So somehow, through lobbying, they were able to remove any limitation. So that's why, again, looking at broad histories, democracies function better when wealth inequality is not so high, and that's why, the wealth tax is the direct way to go after the problem. On the dimensions of inequality, Larry said many interesting things, and I agree, wealth is not the only dimension of inequality, but when you think about the very top, wealth is the thing. It's essentially, the fact that you own means of production, big businesses, that's what generates your income. Inequality in consumption, that the example that Larry gave is largely irrelevant there. All the income comes from wealth. Wealth ownership is the key thing, and that has, Social Security, Medicare, I'm all for it, but it's a different problem, that concentration from that concentration of economic power.
Let me just make a couple points. One, as somebody who overestimated my talents once gave me the piece of advice: you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And so you have to decide what your agenda is, and you can't fix everything that's wrong. And I suggested things that I think are much closer to the frontier of the fixable than trying to get established the idea that we're going to start trying to figure out what everybody's wealth is in America. Take that guy who owns 50 car dealerships. Take that guy who owns a private real estate company, who owns 2 shopping centers. How do you figure out what their wealth is and decide how much they're going to pay in taxes in a feasible and an easy way? Remember, if you tax the people above the threshold, but you have to figure out the wealth of lots of other people to decide whether they're above the threshold or below. So almost everybody who has looked at it has thought it was really too hard a problem. And we do terribly with the estate tax. Look, the estate tax is a version of a wealth tax. Instead of taxing 2% each year, we tax, in principle, 40% each generation when there's a turnover. And that manages to get itself avoided 100 different ways, and there manages to be all sorts of problems. So if we can't do it once every 25 years in a big way, I don't know why we should be confident when no one else has succeeded that we're going to be able to do it every year in a small way. It's just not right that if you just look at just go down the Forbes 400 and look at where the people have their money. Large amounts of it are in things that are not currently traded on markets in ways where it would be easy to implement your idea. And if people started moving it to this trust and this foundation, you wouldn't collect. No official scorekeeper would come up with any revenue estimate close to the kinds of revenue estimates that you are suggesting. But there is a question, and it's a legitimate question, of is it a good idea, kind of in a democracy, how should we think about taxes? if we said we were going to pass a law that said that the Koch family has to pay taxes, I think everybody would kind of think that having taxes that were a tax on somebody with a name was probably a bad idea. Well, if we choose the richest 500 families and we say they're going to pay a tax and nobody else is going to have to pay a tax, that has a little bit of that character as well. So I think there is a kind of question as to how we should think about it. And you do have to ask the question, what kinds of risks were taken? People were lucky. And remember, what is it that's happening with most of the money? If the people are buying airplanes and yachts, then they have to sell the stock, and then they pay tax. Now, there is an issue that they can borrow against the stock, and we think that would be one of the loopholes that we should close. But if what they're doing is sitting there investing the money in what they think are lots of good companies that are creating jobs and creating products and all that, that's something we should be at huge pains to go out and tax. I'm not sure that that's something that I want, that would be my top priority to fight for. I worked in Washington. There were all kinds of special interests that did terrible things, but most of the special interests weren't the wealthiest. The realtors who use their political power to have a cartel that says that no matter how high house prices go, they get 5% whenever a house is sold. That's terrible. But none of them are wealthy. It's just that there are a lot of them, and they're in every congressional district, and they have a really big pack. The life insurance salesman, it's terrible the way in which you can avoid taxes in all sorts of ways with life insurance. The NRA, it's really ugly what that kind of thing is able to do. Most of the problematic political power money is not wealthy, is not individual super wealthy people. It's large groups with large PACs, or it's companies, or it's trade associations. Look, take an example, the export of oil, I think if almost anybody in this room studied it, they would decide that it was a much better idea for the United States to export certain kinds of oil and then import certain kinds of oil than to not allow the export of oil. It just doesn't change the level of oil consumption. It just makes it more efficient. But you can debate about that. But if you ask where the lobbying for that came from, it didn't come from anybody who was close to qualifying for Emanuel's tax. It came from lots of little guys running little refineries all over the place. So the idea that you can go after political money doing bad things with some kind of broad wealth tax, I think just isn't right.
We can go and ask you,
I mean, I just ask you the question, yes. Emmanuel, what's your best example of a bad policy that might plausibly have been avoided if we'd been taxing the wealth of the super wealthy?
I mean, I think this is too narrow a question, because I do think, the type of policies we were seeing when you live in a more equal society are going to be very different from the policies that you're going to see in a very unequal society like what the U.S. has become. And I mean, I wanted to ask you, you're not struck by the fact that you have the richest person in the world, right there, suddenly getting so much political power that doesn't, light a
Who also has huge media
yes, with media
control.
influence.
So it's quite a triumvirate of somebody in government, money, and media.
You don't
So-
see the connection.
So I think I'm probably the only person in this room who has written an op-ed in the New York Times in the last 3 weeks condemning the activities of Elon Musk's Doge. So I yield to no one in my concern about what he's doing. That's not the question. The question is, would having taxed 2% of his wealth last year and the year before have in any meaningful way attenuated his ability to do that? Or should we have a different kind of rules about who can get access to government computers that require that they be government employees? Should we have a different kind of disclosure standard for people who are performing public functions? And should we have a quite different approach to ethics, conflicts of interest, that's much more serious on the part of those who are in government? And that's the potentially productive approach to addressing these issues, I believe. I don't think your tax would have any, his contributions that got him to this point are 1 week's income from his wealth. And so I just think you have to be very careful. I think there's one other thing that I have always been struck by that's just worth people thinking about in this, and it's always surprised me. If you look at countries like Sweden, which we think of as being more socially democratic, they don't even have estate taxes. They think it's unfair to have estate taxes. They think that they want to perpetuate families, they want to perpetuate successful families, they want to allow family taxes. So this idea that taxing hard wealth is the way to be a more just society is, I think, belied by looking at the number of countries that don't even take the first step down this road towards estate taxation. I don't think Canada doesn't have nearly as much estate taxation as another example as we do.
I'm going to ask a question, but could we put up the attendance so students who are enrolled in the class can post up? I just wanted to ask about, so I think there are, policy always comparative. You're trying to figure out what compared to what looks better. I'm worried that, because I'm attracted to a lot of the suggestions you made, that in a world of such massive inequality, you're not going to get the closing up of loopholes and the enforcement of rules, and you're going to actually have the rules be shaped and warped by the power of the people to implement the rules. And that's the worry, is that compliance itself is endogenous to
Look,
kind of what kind of
if
leverage
the ri-
people have.
Look, if the rich control everything, then you're not going to get Emmanuel's proposal passed, and you're not going to get some of the other proposals that I described passed.
So it's not everything.
For Emmanuel's proposal to be a good idea in those terms, you'd need a theory as to why it was more politically feasible than the measures I suggested. Now, it is true that Elizabeth Warren did choose to run on this. It's also true that she only didn't get past the second primary, and that nobody has taken it up since that time. So the judgment of the political cognoscenti is that the various kinds of steps that I described may be very hard, and we may not succeed in implementing them given all the problems associated with inequality. But that the more feasible approach is down the kinds of roads that I was describing, the kinds of roads that are proven in other countries, the kinds of roads that take us back to places that we have been before, the kinds of roads where 40% of the law professors in America don't think it's unconstitutional, as a large number of law professors think the wealth tax is unconstitutional. So I just think you can debate just how much the problem is inequality and just how hard we want to go after inequality. And there are a set of arguments. The reason I'm a Democrat is that I believe those arguments for going after inequality, even though there are thoughtful people who would reject even that formulation. But the question is whether the best way to go at inequality is the most novel, radical, and untried way. And that's the argument that I've never been able to get myself to relate to. And, you know, it is probably hard. It was hard for me to understand initially. When I was the Secretary of the Treasury, it was kind of a remarkable thing. I mean, I remember being just astounded by it. The Republicans passed through the House and the Senate measures that would eliminate the estate tax. And Bill Clinton vetoed their bill. And the question was whether Congress would uphold his veto. And in order to uphold his veto, we needed to get about 80% of the Democrats, 85% of the Democrats, would be enough to uphold his veto. And we succeeded, but it was hard work. It was hard work because just a large number of those congressmen had talked to the leading business figures in their district who owned newspapers, who owned shopping centers, who owned things and were worth large amounts of money, but they didn't have large amounts of money. They just owned these businesses that were worth large amounts of money. And they thought that when they died, having their kids have to pay a third of that was really a kind of outrageous thing. And that felt reasonable to lots of Democratic congresspeople. It didn't feel reasonable to me, which is why I was able to argue about it. But I just think that you're making a mistake if you don't recognize that in terms of conventional concepts of fairness, this idea that you should be paying money because you have something that's valuable that is not generating liquid money is just an enormously salient moral intuition for a large number of our fellow citizens, and therefore turns out to have a substantial shaping effect on politics.
Yes. I mean, one question I wanted to ask Larry is that the wealth tax, as it was proposed, indeed, has not been taken up, but the Biden administration developed a proposal, the billionaire income tax, which is a tax on the unrealized capital gains of the super wealthy, which is actually economically very similar to a wealth tax. It didn't pass. At some point, it came not that far, from passing, but it didn't pass. The Senate was too conservative. What is your view on that one?
So, just good question. A very, very important question. And just to clarify what it was a thing that basically said, if you're rich, if you have a lot, you have a stock and the stock went way up, and you didn't sell any of it. You have to pay a bunch of money, or you have to basically you have to pay a lot of money because on a capital gain that you have not realized. I don't think it ever really came. I'm pretty close to it. I don't think it ever really came very close to passing in some ultimate sense. Is the first thing I'd say. Second thing I'd say is that proposal was conspicuously absent from the Kamala Harris campaign, and that was not lightly reflected on. And that was because it was thought to have a variety of political problems. Look, I think it's closer to being feasible. If you gave me my choice between your wealth tax and some kind of tax on unrealized capital gains, I would choose the unrealized capital gains, but I'd sure fix the death thing first. And a Congress that's not willing to do the death thing, I think the odds that you're going to get it to do some much more untried thing in terms of taxing unrealized capital gains are pretty unlikely.
Yeah. Okay. All good points. Let me just mention, though, that Kamala Harris had it on her campaign, platform, and she loved to say, I want to tax billionaires, like secretaries. That's also, an expression. The point is that the wealth tax or those billionaire taxes, they do poll extremely well. So it's possible, the public is misinformed, doesn't understand all the points, you're making, but the policy has simplicity and appeal in the sense that, it targets, the very wealthy.
It has simplicity and appeal until you say to the people, here's this guy who owns a lot of car dealerships. Should he have to pay a bunch of money and start selling off his car dealerships to pay a bunch of money? And once you say that, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I kind of think they're more wrong than they're right. But the appeal diminishes very quickly. Look, there have been all kinds of this isn't that hard an idea. I mean, you guys are brilliant and it's creative and you guys have done really good work, but this isn't that difficult an idea to have. And there are a lot of countries in Europe, there are a lot of them that are progressive, there are a lot of super hyper wealthy families, for example, in Sweden. The wealthiest family in Sweden relative to Swedish GDP puts Elon Musk to shame. That's true in a number of other European countries. Not one of them have done this. And so I think you just have to think about that in terms of the politics and the practicality of it.
So I want to now open it up to the audience. And all kinds of questions are welcome, including critical questions, but really questions. So please come up and ask your questions. And in the spirit of open-minded discussion and exploration of these issues, I should ask you both about declining marginal utility of money, and maybe we ought to be taxing at 100% a lot of extreme wealth. But I'll leave that.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you had a question. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to speak today. I really apologize earlier for the disruption because I do agree that conversation is really healthy, even if you do disagree. I did have one quick question. Honestly, for the both of you, a lot of this conversation revolved around money in political power, but I wanted to focus on the idea that just simply being a billionaire by itself is unethical, mainly because a lot of the arguments around that surround the fact that a lot of billionaires and their corporations do not treat their workers fairly, do not pay them a living wage, do not give them the amount of money that they are then contributing to the owner or the stakeholders or shareholders in the organization. And that's why a lot of people feel so passionately about a wealth tax in order to start redistributing that wealth. So how do you feel about that sort of mentality or that sort of argument? Thank you so much.
I'm happy to start. That's an excellent question. What you realize is that, yes, you build a business, you become very successful, you become a billionaire, and in a capitalist system, you literally have almost autocratic power, in running your business. Elon Musk acquires Twitter, can fire 80%, and everything here is legal. And I do think it's a problem. I do feel like when an institution, becomes big, it shouldn't be, the power shouldn't be so concentrated, either by an owner or a CEO. And I see the wealth tax as a way of okay, you build a business, you become a billionaire, but the idea is that you have, to give back to society. That is, your stake in the business is going to diminish, with a highly progressive tax. And in my view, that has a lot of appeal, in the same way, yeah, that you have power at some point, but you give it back, to society. So I do think there is a tight link, between wealth, power, democracy. A lot of our institutions, particularly in the business side, are not democratic enough, in my view.
I've worked for decades in favor of a higher minimum wage. I've been a strong advocate of various kinds of enhancements to employee benefits. I think it should be easier to organize a union in the United States in a private company than it is. So I'm all for justice for workers. I don't think if you took away 2% of Elon Musk's wealth, it would have any effect at all to raise anybody's wage who worked at Tesla. Zero. The vast majority of the big companies in the United States are owned by a large number of dispersed shareholders. The BlackRock, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Stanford Endowment. They pay the wages they pay. If you think there's something unjust about them, it is something you ought to address with things like a higher minimum wage. But the idea that somehow you're going to fix that by adjusting the number of billionaires, I just don't think that adds up in any reasonable set of causal path that I've ever heard explained. And I think the best thing that you can do for workers is try to run an economy where different businesses are competing fiercely for workers, and so they raise their wages and raise their benefits, and that's the best approach.
But one specific point, again, about Elon Musk. Elon Musk comes in, buys Twitter for $47 billion. Twitter that you were using, and loving quite a bit. It doesn't shock you that he has then the power, to fire 80% of people? That seems right to you? Or does that shock you in some way?
What the nature of the takeover rule should be, I think that's a complicated discussion that sort of goes beyond what we're really debating here. But I don't think it's a problem that's caused by Elon Musk's wealth in any important sense. The Stanford University Endowment is heavily invested in any number of private equity firms that buy businesses, and then they own the businesses and they run the businesses in the way they think is efficient. And sometimes that means that they reduce the level of employment in those businesses. So I think we need to be pretty careful of starting to say that people shouldn't try to run businesses in the ways they think are most efficient, because I think down that path can come a great deal of inefficiency. And we need to remember that for all its faults, if you look at the growth of income per person in the United States, it's done very well compared to the growth of income per person in societies that much more heavily regulate businesses and their other relations. And so I think it's something we need to pay attention to, like raise the minimum wage, but we need to do it with a fair amount of caution, lest we become France, which I don't think is a more attractive economic model, Emmanuel. Do you?
France is billionaire heavy as well, and actually my co-author Zuckman, was heavily involved, in helping France develop a billionaire tax that passed parliament, but has a long odds, in becoming law. So we'll see.
I really appreciate both of your responses. Thank you so much.
Hello. Thank you for giving us your time today. This is a little bit more of a question for Emmanuel. So there was, significant emphasis on the oligarchy concern. But I'm curious, you know, as it pertains to your proposal, have you, I guess, has efficiency concerns shaped your proposal? And I'm thinking, you know, when it comes to a wealth tax, right, you know, some of that wealth might be tied up in productive ventures. You know, we mentioned Bezos and Musk a lot, but some of it might just be, yeah, old money tied up in land or natural resources. And I'm just curious to get your thoughts on how that's shaped your proposal.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the wealth tax works well here because you are a young person thinking about developing a business, and probably, you know, you want to have a positive impact in the world. You're probably not going to be discouraged, you know, as a young person by thinking, okay, there's going to be a billionaire tax, you know, when I get, you know, more than 1 billion. So I don't think the incentives there are that bad, you know, to start a business. Thankfully, you know, people think about other things, you know, than just accumulating billions. But once you've gotten, you know, your billions and you have a business, then it has a tendency to become, you know, entrenched wealth. You know, you want to protect your business, and that's where the wealth tax, at least, you know, will make sure that it's not going to be you as a person, you know, who keeps, you know, that business forever. And I do think that in a democratic society, you know, it makes sense that people cannot, and their families and their dynasty cannot hold on to a business forever. Now, on the first part, we don't have good empirical evidence. We don't really know. It's very hard to estimate, you know, whether the fact that you think, you know, taxes are going to be higher is going to discourage you from entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and if I may, I'd ask even more specifically, like from an administrative standpoint, do you have like a fairly, you know, bright line way of distinguishing from productive and unproductive wealth?
Productive and unproductive wealth. I mean, you can look at the nature of wealth, but the point is that the wealth tax does not destroy businesses. It destroys, I mean, it shrinks, you know, the large shareholders. Okay, and it is true, and that's a point, you know, that Larry made. If your wealth is invested in treasury bonds, the wealth tax is going to hit you, you know, very hard because the income generated there is small, and so the wealth tax can be bigger than the income. In contrast, if you are like Mark Zuckerberg, you know, on a business that grows and grows, you beat the wealth tax. You know, it's not going to prevent accumulation of wealth. It's just going to be, you know, in the phase where the wealth becomes mature, you know, and the business has grown. In that case, you know, the wealth tax is going to wear down your wealth, you know, pretty fast.
All right, thank you.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Hi, my question's for Secretary Summers. There was a graph presented earlier showing the trend of increase, the share of GDP, you know, for the wealthiest 400 families, their share of GDP is increasing. And there doesn't seem to be really any sign that the trend is going to turn the other direction. And I was curious, more specifically, your response to that, given that you're not as favorable to the wealth tax, what other ways could we remedy that trend? Or if that trend is difficult to curb, how can we potentially deal with the effects of that increasing wealth concentrated in those top 400 families?
So here's how I kind of think. Here would be the kind of first, it's not the whole answer, but here would be my first part of the answer. The stock market in the United States has earned 17% a year over the last 12 years. That's a completely extraordinary period. There might have been one or two other periods of 12 years when it's earned that much, but that's completely extraordinary by historical standards. And the people who started were the people who had the most stock. And so when the stock market goes up, reflecting the fact that the economy's working and people are becoming more optimistic about the future, those are going to tend to be times when when inequality is going to go up, but that's a manifestation of a fundamentally very positive thing. So my best guess is, who knows? I'm not going to give investment advice here, but I'd be very surprised if the stock market over the next decade delivers anything like 17% a year. And so I think it would be a serious mistake to think that that trend is going to continue in anything like the way that it has moved over this year, and over the last 10 years. So I would rather be focusing not on measures of wealth, because most of that wealth, again, they're contributing it to the economy. They're making it available to other people to start businesses, to be lent out to other businesses, to be invested in other businesses, to make things go. I'd much rather be focused on extreme levels of consumption, dynasty creation through the passage of estates. I just don't think that wealth is the right kind of focus. And while since I'm talking, I'm just going to say one other thing. Look, I relate to everything that's been said here about Elon Musk, and there's more that can be said. But I think there's something else that is worth remembering. In the last 3 years, he has put 4 times as much stuff in orbit as NASA has. And he's done it with money that he invested that he might not have been able to invest if we had launched a successful assault on his wealth 5 years ago, or 20 years, or 15 years ago. And his safety record is no different from NASA's. His cost of getting something up there is much lower than NASA's. And I think being a society where those kinds of things can happen, I think that you need to be prepared to accept some inequality in order to have that happen. You don't need to accept a set of rules where you're allowed to pay bribes if that's what's happening. But I think you need to be careful about just how you approach these questions around inequality. You know, we basically don't have polio in the world anymore. Very few exceptions because of Bill Gates. Would that have happened if we'd had a successful major assault on his accumulation of wealth? I'm not quite so sure. So this idea of going after wealth as the central theme for thinking about justice is one that I think we ought to at least be hesitant with respect to.
Thank you.
So I noticed there are quite a few people lined up, and we're getting close to time, so I wonder if we could at least take 2 questions at a time. So let's hear 2 questions, and then...
Hi, this is a question for either of you. I'm curious about this idea of like the, whether it's like one party that owns a company or an entity versus like many shareholders, like in the sense that, like, you know, the extreme example is the car dealerships or whatever, but maybe the more pertinent example is like the New York Times. In one part of my head, I'm like, isn't it better if we incentivize more companies to be owned, not by single families, but by more like larger consortium of investors? So I was curious, is that generally considered a good idea? And if so, is the wealth tax a way of achieving that?
If the U.S. nationalized the wealth of all the U.S. billionaires, I think that would be like $6 trillion or something. And in the context of national debt, that's a drop in the bucket. It's a few years of the deficit. And so my question, mainly for Larry Summers, is do you think it makes sense for us to be focusing on a wealth tax rather than, say, optimizing GDP growth?
Let me say a word about the first question. I mean, it was considered an incredible achievement of American capitalism to have big businesses with very diversified, stockholders. So that has a lot of advantage, it funds, it allows, people like us, to save for our pension, through the stock market, get the good returns Larry was talking about. And the striking thing is that, yes, in a capitalist economy that worked well, with good property rights and so on, even though the managers were not the owners, the businesses were doing well. Very different from Russia, where the small shareholders, would be systematically, raided by the large shareholders. So that's a very, very valuable property, of U.S. business. And the wealth tax, again, as a way, accelerates that movement, by shrinking, the large shareholders. I'm not certain that large shareholders per se, in management of big businesses, they are good, when they start, with entrepreneurship. I don't think they are needed, for forever.
So on the second question, look, I think that it's hugely important to focus on GDP growth and to focus on accelerating growth of the economy. And I think ultimately the most important determinant of average wage levels, the most important determinant of how many people are below any given poverty line is how big the economy is. And so the most important thing from my perspective is to focus on growing the economy faster. Would I like the gains from growing the economy faster to be distributed more equally rather than less equally? Yeah, I would like that to be distributed. But I think the focus on growing the economy fast is very important. I think that I am more ambivalent on this question of what the right structure of ownership is, and this is something economists have debated for decades. The other side of it is, suppose you had a world where everybody bought an index fund, and so, you had a company, Procter & Gamble, and it had a huge number of shareholders. And all the shareholders each own 500 stocks because they own the whole stock index, and they don't own very much Procter & Gamble. Well, then who pays attention to make sure that the head of Procter & Gamble, CEO of Procter & Gamble, does something good or something efficient or something sensible rather than just doing what he wants? And so most people tend to think that it's good to have someone with a substantial stake paying attention. And that's why there's some optimal balance between dispersing ownership and having at least some amount of concentrated ownership. Mark Zuckerberg, when you can argue both sides of this, and I'm not sure what's right. Mark Zuckerberg, when he found basically the way Facebook is set up, is that Mark Zuckerberg gets 10 votes for each share he has, and everybody else gets one vote. So he gets to decide what's going to kind of happen. And he says that's because otherwise, like, all the shareholders might decide I had to pay a lot of dividends, and I want to make a lot of big fundamental investments in the future, and we're going to be more about the long run if I get to decide than if we just let everybody demand their cash right away. Is he right? You can argue both. You can argue both sides of that. I don't think there's a hard and fast answer to that, and you can find examples of where things have been made much better by having large shareholders, and you can find examples where things have been made much worse by having large shareholders.
So if we could put the poll up again, and I realize we're at, kind of at time, but because we had the interruption, I'd like us to go a little bit longer. If you can stay and take the last two questions, we'll take them together, and then you can answer and wrap up, and then we'll thank you.
So, I'll start. Thank you for being here, and I'm kind of interested in something that we've been circling for a moment now about what counts, if the wealth tax is a recognition event, or are we trying to force a recognition of some level of tax ownership or some level of like property ownership. And then past that point, I'm kind of interested in if we are treating this as a recognition event, why would say a tax on like borrowing debt or borrowing against someone's stock portfolio not count as a wealth tax?
Hi, I have a question for Professor Summers. We've talked a lot about policy, but I'm curious to hear about market-oriented solutions that balance progressive ideas about fairness with wealth acquisition, considering we do live in a capitalist society. In other words, how can we grow wealth in this country while not blaming or penalizing the wealthy and also adhering to fair ideals?
So on your question, on the question over here, look, there's an issue, which I think is a legitimate issue, which is if somebody owns a lot of stock and they sell their stock to buy a yacht, they pay tax, and I think we'd all think that was fair. If they avoid selling their stock and they borrow money to buy a yacht, you sort of think they should pay tax at that moment too. And there are various tax proposals that would go at doing that. And there's a lot of complexity in the implementation and in how you write the rules. But the impulse behind that seems to me to be quite right. And I'm supportive of those proposals. With respect to wealth accumulation, there are a variety of ideas. There are a whole set of ideas that, for example, Senator Booker has proposed where people would be given an account when they were born that would accumulate and would then be made available to them when they were 18 for a college education if they wished, or or towards their first home if they wished, or towards some kind of training program. I think those are very interesting kinds of ideas. I think it is important to remember that I think there's a lot that has been done and probably more that should be done to facilitate home ownership. And for the vast majority of Americans, the owning a home, paying off a mortgage, accumulating the value of their home is the largest part of wealth accumulation. And I think that is a very productive kind of avenue. I'm not very enthusiastic about ideas that you tell people that they get stock in the companies they work for, because I think if I worked for GE, when GE went down, GE got in all kinds of trouble, life was already bad for me, and it's better to be diversified. And if you get people to own stock in the place they work for, you're making them even less diversified than they otherwise would be. So I'm not very enthusiastic about those kinds of ideas. I think also you have to think about what counts as wealth. For the average American who's looking at getting $20,000 a year, $15,000, $20,000 a year from Social Security for them and for their spouse when they turn 65, indexed for inflation. If you think about what that's worth, it's worth hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. We don't count that as wealth, but it does a large number of the good things that having wealth does. And so I think that strengthening social insurance in a variety of ways and protecting Social Security is probably a higher priority for me than things that give people financial wealth. One thing that's worth remembering in this regard is if you take the Social Security system, for every dollar that's paid in taxes, 99 cents is paid to somebody in benefits. If you take the IRA 401k system, for every dollar that's paid in a contribution to something, about 80 cents is paid in benefits, and about 20 cents is going to the mutual fund companies and the various financial operators. So thinking about how exactly you do it is, I think, very important. And I think what's important is that everybody have a chance at a good life. And I'd focus more on that than I would measures of wealth inequality.
Yeah, I mean, on that last point, I would say, we've talked a lot about wealth at the top, being power, but certainly for the bottom and the middle, wealth is safety. And what's striking is that it's very hard for Americans, to even accumulate a small buffer, to be able to face unexpected expenses. And there, the accumulation of wealth for the bottom and the middle class has a lot to do with regulations about mortgages, paying for education. You guys, if you have student loans, you start effectively with negative wealth, as you embark in wealth. That's very different, than when education is paid for by the government. And yes, the value of social insurance is really crucial, to help supplement your retirement. And those issues, in some ways, are largely independent from the wealth tax at the top that we've discussed.
So, since you mentioned that, I think it points up some of the ambiguity. How should we think about somebody who has the privilege of going to Stanford Law School and who has $150,000 of debt, but they have the incremental economic opportunities that come from having gone to Stanford Law School rather than not having gone to Stanford Law School? I think an accounting system that says they've got negative net worth is just a not very helpful framework for thinking about fairness and equality. And the last people, with all due respect to all of you, who I would want to be bailing out and subsidizing are the people with negative net worth because they borrowed to have the privilege of going to Stanford Law School. And that's another example of why using wealth measures that are very partial in thinking about what exactly is being counted as an asset is, I think, be very misleading in thinking about all of this.
So I want you to join me in thanking our guests for a wonderful discussion. And a great model for how why disagreement persists and why a lot of issues are really complicated, not only on the social scientific side, but also on the evaluative side. So thank you again, with apologies to you for the interruption, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody next week when we talk about another non-controversial topic of university athletics. So.